Hey, microchurch. I hope you're having a great week so far. Today, we're going to be looking at Mark chapter 7, verses 24, all the way through the end of the chapter in verse 37. And today, what we're going to see is that the gospel is not exclusive, right? It's all inclusive, right? It's encompassing of everyone. And it's not for certain races, it's not for certain cultures, it's not for just the do-gooders or the church attenders or whatever. That the gospel, the invitation of life-transforming grace that is given to us by Jesus Christ is for anyone and everyone who chooses to receive it and to accept it and to live into it. And we're going to see that today in Mark chapter 7, starting in verse 24. Jesus says, "And from there he arose and he went to the region of Tyre and Sidon, which was a Gentile region. And he says he entered a house and he did not want anyone to know," right? Jesus didn't want to be disturbed in any form or any fashion, right? He was looking for some rest. He wanted some peace and some quiet, and he wanted his disciples to have some peace and some quiet. But look what Mark says. It says, "Yet he could not be hidden," right? I love that Mark brought this point out, that Jesus could not be hidden. Daniel Aiken, he said that the brilliant glory of the Son of God cannot ever be hidden, right? Jesus's reputation preceded him even into this predominantly pagan culture and region. People knew about him. They knew what he was doing. They knew what he could do. And as soon as someone got word that he was in their area, they sought him out, right? Specifically, this woman, as Mark goes on to say, immediately a woman whose little daughter had this unclean spirit heard of him, and she came and she fell at his feet. And so she heard Jesus was in the area. She was desperate to find him. She immediately went to him, and she fell at his feet, and she begged him to deliver her daughter from this unclean spirit that she had. You can go read in Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28, and it gives us a little bit more information about this interaction. But we can see that Jesus, right, he didn't just reject this person, right? He didn't just turn her away, but Jesus' response to her was a little different than what we probably thought Jesus, or the way that Jesus would have responded. In fact, Jesus said that this woman was a Gentile. She was a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and to throw it to the dogs." Right? When we hear that, we probably think, man, what in the world is Jesus doing? And he's calling her a dog. Now, this woman, though, she knew that she was going to be despised, right? She knew that she was going to be someone that they looked down upon, or even maybe even hated, because the Jewish people hated the Canaanites. They hated the Phoenicians, and they saw them as these radically wicked and rebellious people. And on top of that, she was a woman, right? And women weren't highly regarded either. And so she had everything going against her as she approached Jesus and her disciples, but she was persistent and she was desperate, and she continued to beg Jesus to heal her daughter. And see, from our vantage point, this woman seemed like she would be the best candidate for Jesus to help, right? She was faithful. She knew how to approach Jesus. She was desperate. She was humble. She knew that Jesus was her only hope to heal her daughter. But according to Matthew's account, right, Jesus' first response to her was he ignored her. Right? Matthew wrote, but he did not answer her a word. Right? Man, what a crazy thing. Right? She went to Jesus, she begged him, and he completely ignored her. At least that's what it seems like is happening. Right? And the disciples, they seemed to be okay with this until she kept going. Right? She kept getting louder and louder and louder, and they were getting more and more annoyed by her. And so they approached Jesus and they said, "Jesus, man, tell her to leave. Ask her to go." And Jesus' response was he looked at her and he said to her, "I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." And so Jesus seemingly rejected her for her help. This is all in Matthew 15. Right? He tells her that that he would love to help her, but he can't, essentially, is what it seems like. But this woman, she doesn't take no for an answer. Right? She keeps pressing in and she keeps pleading with Jesus, and she throws herself at his feet, and she says, "Lord, help me." right? She continued to plead with Jesus out of desperation, and she knew and she believed that Jesus was the only person that could heal her daughter, and she wasn't going to take no for an answer. She's like the persistent widow who kept coming back to the judge, pleading for justice, and because of her persistence, the judge finally granted her plea, right in Luke 18. But look at what Jesus says to her, and as she keeps pleading with him, he says, let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and to throw it to the dogs. Right? When we read this statement, it seems incredibly harsh and hateful, especially coming from Jesus, right? Someone that is the definition of love and grace and mercy. Right? In this statement, he seems to be calling this woman a dog. Right? In this time period, dogs were not just common house pets. They weren't something that we bought and brought into our home and loved and considered as part of our family, right? They were scavengers, and they were filthy. They were unclean, defiled creatures, and they were nuisances, right? Much like cats today. And so right, they were filthy and unnecessary nuisances. And so Jesus calls this woman, he says, we don't feed the bread to the dogs. And so it seemed like he was rejecting her and despising her. Right? And so the question that we have to ask ourselves in this moment is who do we see as despised and rejected in our lives? Who is it that we look upon and see as outcast, right? As unfilthy and unclean, as far from God and without hope as they can possibly be? Is it the LGBTQ community? Right? Is it the political left? Is it the political right? Is it our president, our vice president? Is it refugees in our city? Is it your neighbor? Man, who is it for you? Because the truth is we all have cultural biases, right, that distort our view of others just as these disciples did in this moment. But this woman, right, hearing these words from Jesus, she didn't take offense, and if she did, she pressed on. Right? She didn't get upset, and she didn't cancel Jesus out. She didn't leave when Jesus seemingly called her a dog. Right? In fact, she took the words that Jesus said and she used them about herself. She said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Right? There are a few things here that I want to point out to you. Right? The first is this. The word for dog that Jesus actually used in this instance was not the word that described a filthy nuisance. It was the word that was referred to or used as a common house pet. Right? It was commonly used to refer to puppies and to small dogs, the pets that people love. Right? And this woman, she picked up on this. She recognized that Jesus did not use the word for a filthy scavenger, but that he was calling her something or someone that he loved deeply, right? And he was doing this to teach his disciples, right? To show his disciples that she was not despised and rejected. She was not unfilthy and unclean, that she was a creation of his, and that she was loved, and Jesus wanted her to know this. And she understood that, right? She received it, and she took that, and she says, yeah, even the dogs receive the crumbs that fall from the table, right? She accepted who she was. She knew that she was seen as unclean by the disciples. She knew that she was not from Israel, that she was not a member of the family. She also knew and understood that Jesus was for her, right? She knew that even though she was not one of the children of Israel, and that in her mind she didn't deserve a place at the table, she knew that there was still enough for her. And what great faith. And Jesus saw this faith, right? Jesus saw this and he knew this and he understood it. And he looked at her and he said that she had great faith and said that her daughter was healed. Right? This narrative, this story that Mark is telling it's a continuation of Jesus' teaching about what makes someone clean or unclean. Right? This woman was viewed upon as completely unclean by all Jewish standards. Right? She was a Gentile, she was a woman, she was pagan, she was from this region that the Jews hated. But Jesus used this moment to teach his disciples that it is not what is on the outside that makes someone unclean, it's what's on the inside. This woman's purity came from her desperation and her need for Jesus. She knew that he was her only hope. And she saw this and he used it as an opportunity to teach his disciples that he came to seek and to save that which was lost, even those that are deemed as unclean and wicked and immoral, right? That they have a seat at the table. And so the truth from this story is this, that Jesus came for all people, right? He came for the people of Israel first, but he came for all nations and all people to know him and his transforming grace and mercy. He came for all tongues and tribes and nations to know him and to worship him. He came to redeem and to restore all people. Revelation 5:9-10 says, "And they sang a new song, saying, Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you made them a kingdom to our God, and they shall reign on the earth." Right? God is on the move. Right? He's working everywhere. He's working in Amarillo, Texas. He's working in the United States. He's working in this world, whether we see it or not. He is working to build his people because he is for all people. And because he is for all people, we should be for all people too. If you read in your group the rest of this, 31-37, you're going to see that. Right? Jesus ended up leaving the region. He went to another Gentile region and he healed this person there. And I want you to read that in your group. But what we need to know is that we need to trust in Jesus because he is where our help comes from. Right? He is the one that offers that. And so we also need to model our lives after him and be filled with compassion for this world around us because they desperately need him, just like we desperately need him every day. No one is out of reach, right? Everyone, the gospel is for everyone. The gospel is for everyone. And because Jesus is for all people, we should be for all people.